My little brother cost my company almost $1 million, and somehow my parents still found a way to blame me for firing him. Last month I sat across from them at their kitchen table with a forensic report in my hand, numbers and dates and account logs spelled out in black and white, while my mother said, "You chose money over family," like I hadn't spent my entire adult life choosing family over everything. My dad pointed his fork at me and said, "If you hadn't put so much pressure on him, he never would have made those mistakes," as if all of this was just one big oops and not a pattern of sabotage that almost took my company under. If you want to understand how I ended up being the villain in my own family after saving my business, I need to start before the day I told my brother to clear out his desk. I grew up in a blue-collar town where having a stable job with benefits was basically winning the lottery. My dad worked nights at a factory for 30 years. My mom did hair in our kitchen and watched other people's kids to bring in extra cash. We weren't poor exactly, but every dollar had a specific job. We never wasted food. We never left lights on. We never forgot where we came from. I was the oldest. That meant a few things. It meant I was the built-in babysitter. It meant I was the one my parents bragged about at church. It meant when something went wrong with my little brother, the first question my parents asked was, "Ethan, why didn't you stop it?" My brother, Luke, was 4 years younger. He was the surprise baby they didn't plan on, the one my mom called her miracle. Where I was quiet and bookish and painfully responsible, Luke was charming, impulsive, and allergic to consequences. When I brought home straight A's, my parents said, "We're proud of you, but we expect that from you." When Luke managed a C, they celebrated like he'd been accepted to Harvard. When I forgot to take out the trash once, it was a lecture about responsibility. When Luke skipped school, somehow there was always a reason. "You're the strong one," my mom would say, patting my arm. "Your brother is sensitive. You have to look out for him." I internalized that sentence so deeply that by the time I left for college, I honestly believed it was my job to make sure Luke didn't crash and burn. I didn't go far. Just State College an hour away, majoring in supply chain and logistics because one of my teachers said it was practical and would pay well. I worked through school, slept too little, and came home on weekends to help my dad fix things around the house. Luke stayed home, barely made it through high school, and bounced between community college classes and hanging out with friends who never seemed to work. When I graduated, I got a job at a regional shipping company. It was boring, unglamorous work, lots of spreadsheets and angry phone calls, but I was good at it. After a few years of watching them screw over drivers and cut corners, I did the most reckless thing I've ever done. I left and started my own company. Silver Ridge Logistics began with a rented office over a laundromat, one-use truck, and more optimism than sense. I made sales calls until my voice went hoarse. I drove loads myself when we were short. I took contracts no one else wanted, the messy routes and small clients, and treated them like they were Amazon. It was terrifying. It was exhausting. And slowly, it worked. 5 years later we had a fleet of trucks, a warehouse, 15 employees, and a reputation for being the company that did not screw things up. I say we, but for a long time it was just me and a handful of people who believed in what we were building. My parents didn't really get what I did. They just knew I wore a button-up shirt now and had my name on a door. My mom loved telling her clients, "My Ethan owns his own company," while Luke floated from job to job like a helium balloon with a slow leak. By 24 he tried college twice, quit 3 different retail jobs, and been fired from a car dealership for not respecting procedures, which is a nice way of saying he lied about credit checks. He still lived with my parents, still slept until noon, still convinced himself his big break was coming. I kept my mouth shut. I brought groceries when I visited. I fixed my dad's truck. I didn't lecture Luke, because any time I came close, my mom's eyes would fill with tears and she'd say, "He's trying, Ethan. Not everyone can be like you." The call came on a Wednesday morning. I was at the office, knee-deep in a routing nightmare because a storm had shut down a highway. My mom's name lit up my phone. I almost ignored it, then guilt won. "Hey, Mom," I said, tucking the phone under my chin while typing. "Is everything okay?" "We need to talk about your brother," she said, and my stomach dropped. I closed my laptop and shut my office door. "What happened?" I asked. "He's hurting, Ethan," she said immediately, going on the defensive before I even opened my mouth. "That last job really humiliated him. They treated him like trash. Your father and I are worried. He needs a chance." "What kind of chance?" I asked, although I could already see where this was going. "You have this wonderful company," she said. "You're so blessed. Maybe you could bring him on. Just to help out. Get some experience. Build his confidence." "Mom," I said, pinching the bridge of my nose. "This isn't a summer job at the mall. If someone screws up here, we can lose accounts. Drivers don't get paid. People lose their jobs. I can't just hand him something because he's family." "So you're saying no," she said, hurt sharpening her voice. "You're saying your only brother isn't worth helping." "That's not what I said," I replied, feeling the old script playing out. "I'm saying if I hire him, he has to be able to do the work. It can't be charity." My dad got on the line then, which he rarely does unless things are serious. "Son," he said. "You've always been the steady one. Your brother, well, you know he's had a harder time. If you don't help him, I don't see who will." That sentence landed like a weight on my chest. "You've always been the steady one." It wasn't a compliment. It was a job description. I sat there in silence for a few seconds, staring at the schedule on my wall, at the names of my employees, at the list of positions we actually did need filled. I had a gap in operations. Someone to help coordinate loads, handle customer calls, keep the software updated. I had resumes from people with real experience sitting in my inbox. I also had decades of training that told me I was supposed to catch my brother every time he fell. "All right," I said finally, against my better judgment. "He can come in next week. We'll start him in operations support. But he has to treat it like a real job, Mom. No calling out for nothing. No strolling in whenever he feels like it. He answers to my ops manager, not to me." "Thank you," she said, already crying. "You won't regret it, honey. This will be so good for him." I regretted it before he even showed up. Luke walked into my office 20 minutes late on his first day, iced coffee in his hand, wearing a shirt he clearly hadn't ironed. "Sorry, man," he said with a grin. Traffic was brutal. We live in a town with one major road and he was coming from my parents' house 10 minutes away. I stared at him. "You know you're on the clock at 9, right?" I asked. "Not leave the house at 9. He rolled his eyes. "Got it, boss," he said, putting this exaggerated emphasis on the word boss that rubbed me exactly the wrong way. I introduced him to our operations manager, Carla, a woman who had been doing logistics longer than Luke had been alive. I told him she was in charge of his training. I made it very clear he was not getting special treatment. At first, I actually thought it might work. He picked up the phone part quickly. He was good with clients in that surface-level way he'd always been good with strangers. He joked with drivers. He learned the basic layout of our software. Carla reported that he was green but not hopeless, which, coming from her, was high praise. The first few mistakes were small. A wrong extension given to a client. A dispatch note that didn't get logged, forcing a driver to call back for details. Annoying, but fixable. We went over them. Carla documented them. Luke apologized, promised to do better, and for a while it looked like he actually tried. Then the errors got bigger. A shipment that had to reach a hospital by morning was booked under the wrong priority level. We caught it just in time by sheer luck when a driver noticed the note didn't match the usual code. A load of refrigerated goods sat in a dock bay because Luke never entered the pickup into the system. We paid through the nose on that one and almost lost the client. Each time we traced the error, his login was attached. Each time he had a reason. He'd been tired. The system had frozen. Carla hadn't explained that part clearly enough. He's not detail-oriented, my mom said when I mentioned it at dinner once, like that excused everything. You can't expect him to be perfect. I don't, I said. I expect him to be competent. My dad frowned. You're hard on him, he said. You've always been hard on him. He's trying, Ethan. Trying is not enough when one mistake can cost us 40 grand, I said, but I let the subject drop because my mother's eyes were already filling with tears. Carla started pulling me aside more often. If his last name wasn't yours, he'd be gone already, she said bluntly one afternoon, tossing a misrouted order on my desk. I'm not saying he's evil, but he's careless, and careless kills us in this business. I knew she was right. I also knew that firing him 2 months in would create a nuclear winter at my parents' house. So I rationalized. I told myself he was still learning. I told myself he would grow into it. I told myself loyalty meant being patient. Then the big one hit. It started with a simple question from our accountant about why our cash flow looked off. Nothing catastrophic. Just thin. Thinner than it should have been given the contracts we were fulfilling. At first, we assumed it was the usual culprit, delays in clients paying their invoices. But when we pulled the aging report, it didn't match the deposits. A couple of invoices showed as paid on the client side but still open in our books. I thought it was a software glitch. Our accountant dug deeper. 3 large clients, all newer accounts Luke had helped on board, were sending payments to an account number that did not match our primary operating account. Their statements showed Silver Ridge Logistics as the payee. The bank routing was the same. The account number was not. When we called the bank, they confirmed that yes, there was a secondary business account under our company's name. It had been opened 6 months earlier. I had no memory of opening it. Sometimes owners forget these things, the branch manager said with a tight professional smile. You've grown a lot. Maybe it was for a specific project. I'm pretty sure I'd remember a 6-figure account, I replied. Who's listed as authorized on it? Just you, she said. Ethan Cole. With a digital signature. She turned the screen toward me. My own signature stared back, perfectly reproduced. I felt like I was looking at a forged passport for a life I hadn't lived. Our systems show it was completed online from an IP address that matches your office, she added. My mind raced. The only people who ever used my computer were me, my assistant sometimes to pull files, and occasionally Mark, my finance guy. Mark had been with me since almost the beginning. He was calm, meticulous, almost boring. The kind of guy you handed your entire financial life to without worry. He had access to everything. I didn't want to suspect him. I also couldn't ignore the possibility. We authorized a full internal audit. We brought in a fraud specialist recommended by our attorney. They pulled access logs from our server, from the banking site, from our internal systems. A week later I sat in a conference room while a young woman with a laptop and a calm voice walked me through the findings. The new account was set up using your credentials, she said, but the IP address maps to a different workstation down the hall. And the browser history suggests someone logged into your profile from that machine. Whose workstation? I asked, even though my stomach already knew the answer would make me sick. She clicked a few times. This one is assigned to Lucas Cole, she said. Your operations support. My first reaction was denial. He couldn't have. He was careless. He was lazy. He was my brother. The idea that he'd be capable of something this deliberate made my throat go dry. No one else uses that station, she asked. Not regularly, I said. IT, she suggested. Cleaning crew. IT logs in with a generic admin account, I said. We don't outsource cleaning. She nodded. Look, I'm not saying he did this alone, she added. Whoever designed this knew your banking structure well. But the initial setup, the emails to the clients with the updated remittance info, the confirmations, they all went through his login. I confronted him the next day. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just called him into a small conference room, shut the door, and slid the printed logs across the table. Explain these, I said. He glanced at them, shrugged, and laughed. I can't even read half of this tech nonsense, he said. You know I barely passed computer science in high school. This part, I said, tapping the page. This is your username. These are your timestamps. This is the bank's website. This is the form to open a new account. This is the PDF with my signature. All from your terminal. He rolled his eyes. So maybe I clicked the wrong thing once, he said. Why are you always assuming the worst? This isn't clicking the wrong thing, I said, my voice tightening. This is stealing. This is fraud. 3 clients have been sending money to an account I didn't authorize. So maybe the bank messed up, he said, leaning back with his arms crossed. Or your fancy finance guy did it and is letting you pin it on me. Why isn't he in here? Because his logs are clean, I snapped. Because the only common denominator in every error, every missing payment, every screw-up in the last 6 months is you. Something flickered across his face then. Guilt or fear or just anger at being cornered. You think I want your stupid money, he said. You act like you're some big shot. You know what it's like at mom and dad's. You know what I hear every day. Your brother built something from nothing. Your brother worked so hard. Why can't you be more like him? You already had everything handed to you. I laughed, bitter enough to choke on. Everything handed to me? I said. I took out loans. I mortgaged my 20s. I haven't taken a real vacation in 8 years. I haven't had a weekend where I wasn't on call. What part of that was handed to me? He waved a hand. You know what I mean, he said. You're good at this stuff. People take you seriously. Doors open for you. For me, everything's a fight. Mark said, he cut himself off, too late. Mark said what? I asked. He stared at the table. Nothing, he muttered. Just that, big companies do this all the time. Move money around. Use different accounts. It's just cash flow management. We are not a big company, I said. We are a mid-size, barely out of the woods company that cannot afford creative accounting. Did he ask you to help him move money? Silence. Luke, I said, feeling suddenly very tired. I need the truth. Right now. He swallowed. He showed me how to send updated bank info to the clients, he admitted. He said it was a temporary thing, like a buffer. He said he cleared it with you. He said if I helped, he'd cut me in. Just enough to pay off my cards. Help with my car. So you did it, I said. You knew it was shady enough that you needed a cut, and you did it anyway. I thought it was normal, he insisted desperately. Mark said everybody does it. That you'd thank us later when year-end looked cleaner. He said there was no risk. No risk to who? I asked. Because right now the only one on the hook legally is you. The account is in the company's name. The signature is mine. And every digital breadcrumb leads straight to you. You're not really going to throw me under the bus, he said, eyes wide. You're my brother. You lit the bus on fire while I was driving it, I said. What did you think was going to happen? That night I went to my parents to tell them what we'd found. I don't know what I expected. Concern for the company. Shock that Luke would risk something that kept so many people employed. Anger that Mark had manipulated him. What I got was my mother's hand flying to her chest and my father's glare. You can't be serious, my mom said. Luke would never steal from you. He admitted it, I said. He admitted helping Mark reroute payments. Because that man took advantage of him, my dad said. That's on you, Ethan. You're the one who hired some outsider to handle your money instead of keeping it in the family. I stared at him. You think I should have made Luke my CFO? I asked. The guy who failed basic algebra. You think you're so much better than him, my dad shot back. Always have. I think, I said slowly, fighting to keep my voice level, that the person in charge of finances should be someone who understands numbers and doesn't consider fraud a side hustle. He was just trying to get ahead, my mother said, tears spilling now. He's been struggling for so long. You have no idea how hard it's been for him watching you succeed while he can't catch a break. He had a break, I said. I gave him one. I brought him into the company. I put my reputation on the line for him. And he repaid that by helping someone steal from me. You don't know that, she insisted. You're reading reports and screens and acting like that means more than what you know about your own brother. You always take the cold, logical side. Where's your heart? My heart is currently trying to keep 60 people employed, I said. My heart is trying to make sure the drivers who trusted me with their livelihoods don't show up one day to a locked door because my brother and my CFO drained the accounts. We're not talking to lawyers, my dad said firmly. We're not letting you drag Luke into court over a misunderstanding. It's not up to you, I said quietly. This isn't a family meeting about who dented the car. There are banks involved. Clients. Law enforcement. If I pretend this didn't happen, I become part of the fraud. So you're choosing them over us, my mother whispered. You're choosing money over your own brother. No, I said. I'm choosing not to go to prison. I'm choosing to protect my employees. I'm choosing not to let Luke keep hurting people because you refuse to see who he is. That did it. My mother stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. Get out, she said. If you're going to talk about my son like that under my roof, you can leave. He's my son too, my dad added. And if you do this, don't expect us to stand next to you in court. We'll be with him. I left their house feeling like I'd just been disowned for the crime of telling the truth. Over the next few weeks, things moved quickly. Our attorney and the bank worked together. The fake account was frozen. We compiled everything we had on Mark and Luke. The emails. The logs. The transfers to a second personal account in Mark's name that, frankly, shocked even the fraud specialist with how brazen they were. Mark was arrested first. He folded faster than a cheap chair. He tried to blame Luke for more than he'd actually done. Claimed Luke came up with the idea. Claimed he was just going along to keep the peace. The forensic timeline shredded that story. The DA offered Luke a plea deal. Accessory to fraud. Probation. Restitution payments tied to his future wages, assuming he ever had any. No jail time if he cooperated. When my parents heard that, my mom called me sobbing. You can fix this, she sobbed. Tell them you don't want to press charges. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. That's not how this works, I said. The bank is involved. The state is involved. I don't control the DA. You could stand up for him, she said. You could tell them Mark manipulated him. I did, I said. That's why he's getting a deal at all. But I'm not lying. I'm not saying he was some innocent lamb. He did this, Mom. He knew it was wrong. She hung up on me. A week later, I got a text from Luke. Hope you and your golden company are happy, it said. You finally got rid of me. I typed a dozen replies and deleted them all. I didn't know how to explain that I wasn't happy at all. I was furious. I was heartbroken. I was so tired. The twist, the part one didn't see coming, arrived in the middle of yet another meeting with the forensic team. We were wrapping things up, going over final numbers, when one of the analysts pulled up a particular transaction. This one is interesting, she said. Mark tried to initiate a large transfer out of your main operating account into the fraudulent one. $500,000. But it never went through. Yeah, I said. The bank froze the account by then, right? Not yet, she said. This was before that. The transfer failed because the authorization code was entered wrong 3 times in a row. The system locked it out. So Mark fat-fingered it? I asked. We don't think it was him, she replied. The access log for that attempt shows it was started from Luke's terminal under his login. The same computer he used for everything else. But instead of completing it cleanly like the earlier ones, he botched the code 3 times. After that, the bank's fraud detection flagged the activity, and that's part of what triggered their deeper review. I stared at the screen. Are you saying he stopped it on purpose? I asked. She shrugged in that professional, careful way. We can't read his mind, she said. We just know what he did. He engaged with the transfer screen. Entered the code incorrectly 3 separate times. Covered his tracks badly afterward. That's not how people behave when they want money to move cleanly. That image lodged in my brain and would not leave. My screw-up little brother, sitting in his rolling chair at that terminal, staring at a screen asking him to confirm $500,000 leaving my account. Typing a code. Getting an error. Typing it wrong again. And again. I drove around for an hour that night instead of going straight home. I ended up parked outside my parents' house without really planning to be there. The living room light was on. I could see my dad's silhouette through the curtains. I almost went in. I almost banged on the door and shouted, "Do you know your precious youngest stopped one of the worst parts of this?" But I didn't. I left. 2 days later there was an envelope taped to the glass door of my office when I arrived. My name on the front in Luke's uneven handwriting. Inside was a letter. Real paper. Real ink. 3 pages. The first page was defensive. Angry. He wrote about how he felt like a failure. How he was tired of being compared to me. How when Mark said, "This is how real businesses work," he'd wanted so badly to believe it that he shut off the part of his brain that knew better. He blamed me. He blamed our parents. He blamed the world. The second page was different. Slower. He admitted he'd known, at least on some level, that what he was doing was wrong. He admitted that when the first payments hit the fake account and Mark slipped him an envelope of cash, his stomach hurt more than his empty wallet ever had. He admitted that he hated me for having something worth stealing and hated himself more for being the one doing the stealing. And then he wrote about the failed transfer. There was this one day, he wrote, where Mark told me to move a big amount. Like, really big. More than I've ever seen in one place with my name anywhere near it. He gave me the code on a sticky note. Said to plug it in, send it, and then delete the email trail so it wouldn't confuse the auditors. I sat there staring at the screen for like 20 minutes. My hands were sweating so bad the mouse wouldn't work right. I kept thinking about you walking into the warehouse and seeing everything empty. I kept hearing Mom's voice saying you're the strong one, and part of me wanted to see if you really were. I wish I could say I was better than that, but I'm not. I wanted to hurt you and I wanted to protect you at the same time. So I did the coward thing. I punched the code in wrong. Not once. 3 times. I knew it would lock. I told Mark the system glitched. He called me an idiot and stormed off. I told myself I did the right thing, but only halfway. So I don't get points for that. I just need you to know I didn't go all the way. The last page of the letter was the part that twisted the knife and, in some strange way, pulled it out at the same time. He wrote, "Mom and Dad still think you're the bad guy. They tell everyone their big son chose his company over his own blood. They need that story. If they admit I really did this, they have to admit they let me slide on everything my whole life. It hurts, but I get it. Here's the thing though. You're not the villain, Ethan. You were the only one who ever told me no. You were the only one who ever said, this is enough, and meant it. I hate you for that sometimes. I also know you're the only reason I didn't end up deeper in this. If you want to cut me off, I won't blame you. I already burned every bridge you built for me. But if there's ever a day you want to talk to me like I'm not just the screw-up little brother from their stories, I'll pick up." I sat at my desk for a long time after I finished reading. My office door was closed. The warehouse hummed outside. Forklifts beeped. Men shouted to each other about pallets and docks and loading bays. My company was still standing. It was bruised. We had debts to pay and trust to rebuild, but it was alive. We were alive. And the person who had hurt it the most was also, in a twisted, partial way, the person who had kept Mark from gutting it entirely. I didn't turn the letter over to the DA. I didn't destroy it either. I folded it back into the envelope and locked it in my desk. That was my unexpected ending. Not some dramatic courtroom confession or a tearful reconciliation in my parents' living room. Just ink on paper from a brother who had finally stopped pretending he was innocent and instead admitted he was human, messy, jealous, and, in one crucial moment, capable of choosing not to make things worse. I didn't rush to forgive him. I didn't show up at my parents and demand they rewrite the story they tell about me. I did something scarier for a lifelong fixer. I let things be broken for a while. I let my parents think what they wanted. I stopped trying to convince them that I wasn't the villain. I focused on the people who had actually stayed when things got ugly. My employees. My friends. The clients who said, "We'll stick with you." Everyone gets hit once. It's how you handle it that matters. Months later, I texted Luke. Nothing dramatic. Just, "I read your letter. I believe you about the transfer. I'm still angry. But I don't hate you." He wrote back, "That's more than I deserve. I'm trying to fix some things. Probation sucks. So does working nights at a warehouse that isn't yours. But I'm not letting anyone else touch my login." It wasn't a Hallmark moment. There was no music, no hug in the rain. Just two brothers who finally saw each other clearly, not as the golden child and the screw-up, but as two flawed men from the same house who made different choices with the same pain. My parents still tell people I chose my company over my brother. They still introduce Luke as our boy who's had a tough time, and me as our successful one who doesn't visit enough. That used to sting. It still does some days. But when I lock up the warehouse at night and turn off the lights, I know what really happened here. I know who moved the money and who stopped it and who rebuilt everything when the dust settled. The unexpected ending to this story is not that I lost my family. It's that I finally stopped volunteering to be the scapegoat just because I was good at carrying weight. I hired my brother to help him. He nearly destroyed what I built. My parents refused to see it. The world did. In the end, the person who saved my company wasn't the perfect son they thought I was or the perfect villain they decided he was. It was both of us, stumbling through a mess we created together, and then stepping apart so it wouldn't swallow us whole.